In the glittering post-war allure of Los Angeles, a city basking in its golden age of cinema and endless possibilities, a dark nightmare was about to unfold. On a crisp morning in January 1947, in a vacant lot near Leimert Park, a young mother pushing her stroller made a discovery so horrific it would forever stain the city's glamorous facade. This is the story of Elizabeth Short, a beautiful aspiring actress who would become known posthumously as the Black Dahlia. Her brutal murder and the macabre display of her body launched one of the most extensive and sensational investigations in American history, leaving behind a chilling legacy of unanswered questions and a killer who walked away into the shadows. To understand the tragedy, we must first know Elizabeth Short. Born in Boston in 1924, Elizabeth was a striking young woman with raven hair and piercing blue eyes, often described as having an almost ethereal beauty. Like many aspiring hopefuls, she was drawn to Los Angeles, the city of dreams, hoping to make it big in Hollywood. She often worked odd jobs, waitressing, short-term modeling, to make ends meet, living a somewhat transient life, moving between apartments, hotels, and friends' couches. She was known for her striking looks and her distinctive wardrobe, often favoring black clothing, which, combined with her dark hair, later inspired her chilling nickname, the Black Dahlia. This moniker was rumored to come from a film noir movie of the time, or perhaps from her habit of wearing sheer black dresses. Despite her aspirations, Elizabeth never landed significant acting roles. She moved in social circles that included servicemen, aspiring actors, and Hollywood hangers-on, always searching for her big break or perhaps just a sense of belonging. Her life, though outwardly glamorous, carried an underlying current of vulnerability and a haunting quality that, tragically, would foreshadow her end. Elizabeth Short's final days are shrouded in a frustrating mix of conflicting accounts and unreliable witnesses, making it incredibly difficult for investigators to pinpoint her exact movements leading up to her death. Her last confirmed sighting was on January 9, 1947, at the Biltmore Hotel in downtown Los Angeles. She was seen in the lobby, making a phone call and speaking with several individuals. She had supposedly been with a married salesman named Robert Manley, who claimed he dropped her off near the Biltmore, where she said she was meeting her sister. However, her sister was not in Los Angeles at the time. Manley was extensively questioned and eventually cleared as a suspect. From that point, Elizabeth's movements become a confusing blur. Some accounts place her at various bars or restaurants with different men in the days immediately following January 9th. Others claim she was seen at a bus terminal or staying at various residences. The weather during this period was unusually cold and rainy, making it unlikely for her to be spending extended periods outdoors or in transit without adequate shelter. This confusion in her timeline, whether deliberate obfuscation by witnesses or genuine uncertainty, became a significant hurdle for police trying to piece together her last hours. The nightmare began on the morning of January 15th, 1947. A mother, Betty Bersinger, was walking with her 3-year-old daughter near a vacant lot on Norton Avenue and 39th Street in Leimert Park. What she initially thought was a mannequin discarded in the weeds turned out to be the grotesquely dismembered body of Elizabeth Short. The scene was one of calculated horror, indicating a killer with a chillingly theatrical and sadistic intent. Elizabeth's body was cut completely in half at the waist, a precise bisecting that suggested surgical skill. Her internal organs had been removed. Her body had been drained of blood, making it appear pale white. Her face had been grotesquely mutilated, with a severe Glasgow smile, cuts extending from the corners of her mouth almost to her ears. Pieces of flesh had been cut from her thighs and breasts. The two halves of her body were positioned deliberately, about a foot apart, as if posed. Her arms were raised above her head and her legs were spread. There was evidence that the body had been washed and cleaned of blood before being dumped, implying the murder occurred elsewhere, a so-called dumping ground crime scene. The brutality and the staging of the body shocked hardened police detectives and horrified the public. This was not a random act of violence. It was a deeply personal, ritualistic display designed to shock and terrify. The discovery of Elizabeth Short's body immediately ignited a media frenzy. Los Angeles newspapers, particularly the Los Angeles Herald-Express and the Los Angeles Examiner, sensationalized the case, dubbing Elizabeth Short the Black Dahlia, a nod to the recently released film The Blue Dahlia and her supposed preference for black attire. The nickname stuck, making her a macabre celebrity. The intense media coverage put immense pressure on the Los Angeles Police Department to solve the case. Hundreds of officers were assigned, and it quickly became one of the largest investigations in LAPD history. The crime scene yielded very little forensic evidence beyond the body itself, which had been meticulously cleaned. No footprints, fingerprints, or blood other than a small amount where the body was placed. The investigation quickly shifted to tracing Elizabeth's last known movements and interviewing everyone she had ever known. Thousands of tips poured in from the public, but many were unreliable or outright false confessions. The LAPD, under immense public and political pressure, often resorted to questionable tactics, including psychological warfare against potential suspects and a reliance on informants. The very sensationalism that drew public attention also complicated the investigation, leading to red herrings and false leads. The case took an even more chilling turn when the killer began to taunt the police and media directly. On January 23, 1947, a week after the body was found, a package arrived at the Los Angeles Examiner. Inside were Elizabeth Short's birth certificate, social security card, photos, and an address book. Crucially, a note made of cut-out magazine letters stated, "Herein is Dahlia's belongings, and a happy new year. Almighty will catch me when I come in through my door." Subsequent letters and postcards, some signed the Black Dahlia Avenger or just the Avenger, continued to arrive at newspapers. These notes were often boastful, mocking the police, and filled with cryptic messages. One chilling postcard read, "I'll be seeing you later." Signed, the Black Dahlia Avenger. These communications, while offering a glimpse into the killer's mind, provided little concrete evidence. Handwriting analysis was inconclusive, and efforts to trace the origin of the letters proved futile. The killer seemed to relish the attention and the cat-and-mouse game with law enforcement. This pattern of taunting the authorities with letters became a hallmark of later famous unsolved cases, like the Zodiac Killer. Given the sensational nature of the crime, the LAPD interviewed an astonishing number of people, reportedly over 150 official suspects and hundreds more persons of interest. The sheer volume of suspects, combined with the lack of definitive evidence, made the investigation a sprawling and often frustrating endeavor. Dr. George Hodel, a prominent doctor in Los Angeles, he became a strong suspect decades later, largely due to the efforts of his son, Steve Hodel, a retired LAPD detective. Steve found photos that resembled Elizabeth Short among his father's belongings and discovered his father was under surveillance in 1950 for other crimes. George Hodel was suspected in other murders, and his house had tunnels and a dark room. He allegedly confessed to the murder in tape-recorded conversations later revealed. While compelling, the evidence remained circumstantial, and Dr. Hodel was never charged. Robert Manley, the last person to confirm seeing Elizabeth alive at the Biltmore Hotel, he underwent extensive questioning and even passed polygraph tests. Despite initial suspicion, he was eventually cleared. Walter Bailey, a wealthy and eccentric physician, a possible suspect based on a vague connection to Elizabeth and his surgical skills. Red Manley, Robert Manley's brother, also questioned, also cleared. Orson Welles, The famous director was briefly considered due to his history of special effects and knowledge of dissection, and his rumored connection to a similar murder in New York. This was quickly dismissed as pure speculation. The Hollywood elite, the nature of the crime in Elizabeth, as aspirations led to theories involving powerful figures in Hollywood who might have covered up the crime. These often involved sensational claims with little concrete evidence. Confessors, over 50 people, both men and women, confessed to Elizabeth Short's murder, drawn by the intense media coverage and psychological instability. All were eventually deemed unreliable or outright false. The investigation was plagued by false leads, interdepartmental conflicts, and the psychological impact of the gruesome nature of the crime on detectives. Many career detectives felt the case became a black mark on the LAPD's record. Despite the massive resources poured into the case, the Black Dahlia murder was never officially solved. It became a permanent fixture in American true crime lore, an obsession for true crime enthusiasts, amateur sleuths, and generations of detectives. The lack of forensic science. In 1947, DNA analysis, advanced fingerprinting techniques, and comprehensive blood analysis simply didn't exist. The crude methods of the time, coupled with the contaminated crime scene, severely hampered the investigation. The killer's modus operandi, the brutal dissection, the Glasgow smile, and the meticulous cleaning and posing of the body suggested a killer who was either highly skilled or deeply disturbed and ritualistic. This level of violence and precision rarely goes unrepeated, yet no definitive links to other similar murders were ever established. The media's role. The intense and often irresponsible media coverage created a circus around the investigation, complicating police work and potentially feeding the killer's ego, encouraging further taunts. The Black Dahlia murder became a symbol of Hollywood's dark underbelly, a stark contrast to its glamorous image. It inspired countless books, films, documentaries, and even a popular video game. The iconic image of Elizabeth Short, both in life and in the infamous newspaper photos of her body, has become a macabre part of pop culture history. The Black Dahlia murder case remains open, a testament to its enduring mystery. Elizabeth Short, the aspiring actress, never achieved fame in life, but her brutal death propelled her into an eternal, tragic notoriety. Her killer, whether a lone psychopath, a figure connected to the darker side of Hollywood, or a ghost from her past, managed to evade justice and disappear into the labyrinthine streets of Los Angeles. The meticulousness of the crime, the theatrical staging of the body, and the subsequent taunting of the police paint a portrait of a highly intelligent and disturbed individual. Over 75 years later, the questions echo: who was the Black Dahlia's killer? What was their motive for such extreme violence? And will the true story of Elizabeth Short's last moments ever truly be known? The streets of Los Angeles still whisper her name, an unsolved nightmare that continues to haunt the city of dreams.